Hey, thanks guys for coming back for part 2 of this 2-part video where Dr. Mad Max Dean Radin will prove ESP or psi is real.
It's real. It's all real.
Yeah, maybe. So if you missed the first part, I highly recommend you pausing this and going back and checking that one out. But either way, let's jump back in. So we just saw that Dr. Dean Radin was able to use meta-analysis on data from multiple Ganzfeld and Otto Ganzfeld tests, all coming close to a 35 to 37% above chance. Those results, if by chance alone, he estimated to be 45,000 to 1. That's wild. Another thing that shows up in the data is that ESP does appear to be skill-based. And that's actually a pretty wild concept too, because if you can prove you can get better at psychic guessing, then doesn't that just by a small margin prove that it exists anyway?
Maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's a fungal.
I don't know. What are you looking at?
I'm asking you. We're in this together. I don't know what's going on.
So Radin does a good example by comparing ESP or psi as a skill as a batting statistic in baseball. Speaking of baseball, I took the fam to Savannah's Bananas. If you ever get a chance, just check them out. It's a fun time. So here's how it works. Imagine a baseball player who has a batting average of 25%, meaning that if a player goes up to bat, they hit the ball 1 out of 4 times. That's within the range of what's expected due to chance alone for that level of skill. Now compare that skill data with the everyday average human being going up to bat. To get the average batting skill, let's say we collect data on 1,000 of them. And let's say we get something like 10% hit rate, 1 in 10 times they hit the ball. Well, that significant difference between the two percentages means that there's clearly a skill involved that can be learned. And there's a clear difference between Mickey Mantle and some random dude. So in conclusion, the skill of hitting a baseball is clearly a reality. Well, according to Dr. Dean Radin, it does seem to be the case when it comes to ESP. So, if there is no such thing as psychic ability, we shouldn't be able to see any difference between the average non-psychic person and those that claim to have a psychic advantage. It would all just be pure guesswork. Well, given enough data and comparing data between those with a higher skill in ESP, Dr. Radin supposes we actually do see a significant difference. And so if that is true, shouldn't we accept that if you can get better at being able to guess in a psi experiment, doesn't that suggest that, psychic ability exists? Look, the big takeaway is this. We've all heard the quote that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But what Dean Radin is demonstrating here is that there are small but real effects that seem to evidence an extraordinary claim. It's like this massive amount of data that just poops out a little bit of evidence. It's small, it's a cute little evidence nugget, but it's there.
The effect is a statistical analysis, whether in the individual experiment or certainly in the meta-analysis.
Right.
It's statistical. It is a small effect. If this is such a powerful shift in our worldview, why is the effect always so minuscule?
Well, first of all, let's look at scientific disciplines that rely on statistics of weak effects in order to make a case. Well, there's psychology, there's sociology, there's biology, there's medicine, there's even physics, where ultimately science is based on measurement. Measurement is never perfect, in which case you're always going to have to use statistical arguments to make your case. So you take a case where you're testing a new drug, and let's say it's not a new drug, it's just aspirin. So aspirin, it turns out, has been tested repeatedly to see whether or not it prevents a second heart attack. Well, what is the size of the effect for which the FDA gave its approval that you should take aspirin for this? It turns out to be much, much smaller than the effects that we see for telepathy experiments. And yet the FDA and everybody buys aspirin because it shows this effect, which is really tiny. In fact, it accounts for far less than 1% of the variance in the experiments. So it's a really tiny effect. It took way over 20,000 people doing these experiments for long periods of time to see the effect.
You've used a wonderful metaphor, and that is, if the best people so gifted in ESP would go to a casino in Las Vegas or someplace, they would still lose all their money. It would just take them longer to do so.
That's right. So And of course, there in the casinos, the house odds are so weighed against you, you really have to be working at exceptional levels.
Right.
So in general, we're talking about average people who are asked to do some kind of an ESP thing in the lab, and they don't even know that they have this skill. They're still able to show small effects. Now you can say, well, what happens if you start selecting people out who you think might do better? Do you get a better effect? And the answer is yes.
So the point being is that even though the evidence is small but seemingly tangible, the fact that it merely exists is pretty extraordinary.
Extraordinary.
Or it's not. I don't know. I'm not here to convince you. I'm not convinced myself, but you know how it goes. It's just interesting. Thanks guys, I really hope you enjoyed the videos, and this is the part of the video where I lie to your face and say I'm gonna keep pumping out these videos in some ungodly rate, like every 3 minutes. And then you don't see me for a year or two. But the truth is, I actually really am remotivated, and I want to try to do every other week. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I do appreciate you guys very much so. And until next time, stay pondering.